Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to this week's Story War Academy webinar. My name is Kevin Kerr, founder of Arrowhead 3 and creator of the Story War Academy. This week's webinar is special because I'm on the road with a client and it's all recorded. And I have some special things for you. All right, over the last 4 weeks, we have been covering the concepts of the 3 tests of a winning sales message. We know that you first have to have your message being important or emotional to your buyer. It's got to be different from your competition. It's got to be credible and sticky. More on sticky later. And why? Because we know that in B2B business, we want to have bigger deals in less time so that we can have repeat business, being able to upsell products and then cross-sell other products. And you'll remember last week we talked about the concept that runs through all three of these tests, and that is contrast. The world with my product and the world without my product. Okay? Contrast. Okay. Now, have you ever been in a situation where you were trying to communicate with somebody and you wanted the message to get through and stick, but it didn't? How frustrating that was, or maybe somebody was trying to do that with you. Well, that reminds me of a video. Here, a husband and wife are having a conversation, and he's trying to get a message through, and after so many times, she gets frustrated and decides to give him the ultimate sticky message that he will never forget.
Emma. Huh? Emma. Emma.
Every day it's getting on my nerves. Oh, I'm
Emma. Emma.
Oh, I love that commercial. Okay. So what I thought we would do is show you one complete lesson from one of the modules in one of the quarters of the Story War Academy. So let's take a look at the broader picture of what the Story War Academy is all about. And here we are. Okay, Story War Academy is made up of 1, 2, 3, 4 quarters of instruction. And each quarter covers about 8 different modules. Each module covers one big idea, okay? You ever been frustrated where you're trying to remember everything? Well, this is just one big idea. Some companies like to do this once a week or once every 2 weeks, okay? And this lesson takes about 90 minutes. 90 minutes where about 40 minutes is instruction and 50 minutes is made up of team exercises. And that 90 minutes, if you look at it, there's probably 3 different videos, and then at the end of each module is what I call a pressure test, where everybody in the team now needs to practice and then bring it back in front of the team for their coaching and feedback. So it really drives the learning deep. Okay, so today's lesson that I'm going to show you comes from the first quarter of the Story War Academy in the 3rd module. And that particular lesson, it's the first lesson. I'll show you the entire video for this lesson is entitled, Making Your Message Stick. Let's begin today's session with a 1-question survey. Let me ask you, what do you think is more influential in persuasion? The content of the message or the delivery of the message? Pause and discuss your answers for about 2 minutes and come back to me. Okay, so being a messaging guy, I initially sided with the content, folks. Now, years later, I might just change my vote to delivery. That troubling realization started with a quote from story expert Robert McKee, when he said, master storytellers know how to squeeze life out of the least of things, while poor storytellers reduce the profound to the banal. You may have the insight of a Buddha, but if you cannot tell story, your ideas turn dry as chalk. Do you know someone that can make the most boring topic interesting? Someone who can regale a group over lunch as they describe the most mundane event from their home life? My wife's sister Sherry is like this. Anytime Sherry speaks, I know it's going to be interesting. Do you also know someone that can make the most interesting story too painful to listen to? You know the person. Once you hear the tone of their voice, the unnecessary details, or the same story you've heard many times before, you've checked out. They could reveal the real killer of JFK and you'd miss it. We obviously want to make the best of our message content and the message delivery, but we should never underestimate the power your delivery can make on your buyer. So today, our focus will be on how to sharpen a compelling message or your arrowhead with a delivery that sticks. We'll also explore how to sharpen your message with the contrast of value. You'll recall in our last session, we showed how a compelling message is the point of a winning story. We introduced the tool of the arrowhead for your compelling message. We discussed how a compelling message must meet the three tests of first, it must be emotional to your buyer, it must be different from your competition, and third, it must be credible. We then show the arrowhead process to find the compelling message for your ideal buyer. Like mining for gold, you first need to gather all the big potential building blocks by answering 6 questions about your buyer, your product, and your competition. You then reduce it down to the best building blocks with the 3 tests. And finally, you craft it into an arrowhead about your ideal buyer, then test it and polish it by delivering repeated variations of your arrowhead. Think for a moment of a recent presentation or speech you watched, maybe a half hour to an hour long, and let's see if your experience matches what I've seen over and over again in most of the speeches I've seen. We'll use this chart to show on the X the time of the speech, and then here we'll show the attention level of the audience. So up front, the speaker thanks the moderator for letting him come in to speak. Attention level is very high, but then it starts to dip. They start showing some other slides, talk about other things, and now I'm thinking to myself, what am I going to have for lunch? Gosh, I hope there's Wi-Fi in this hotel. And I think I can get some work done. Next thing I know, I'm thinking about who I'm going to have lunch with. I've worked out a lot of other things for my business that I needed to during that time. And then the speaker says, so in conclusion, and it rifles me back to their wrap up. High attention again. I call this the hammock. It's a great place to sleep, but it's a very poor place to have your audience there. So when you think about the hammock, what are speakers normally doing at the very beginning of a presentation? They're typically talking about themselves, maybe showing a map of their offices all around the world. Not a lot of meaty stuff. What are they normally doing at the end of the presentation? Well, here it's the most common. So are there any questions? And that typically gets carried off into a rabbit hole by somebody in the audience. And then there might be the simple scan the QR code, visit our website, or something like that. Now, where are the most important points that the speaker wants to make? Where are they delivered? Yeah, you got it. Right here. To an audience that has an attention level at around 20%. In psychology, we refer to this as primacy and recency. Primacy is when you remember the first thing that you had heard. Recency is when you remember the last thing that you heard. So to combat this hammock effect, I would recommend you use the tool called a spike. A spike is all about how to get and hold the attention of your audience. Let's see what that would look like. So, same presentation, but at the very beginning, instead of just starting with the same old boring beginning, you hit them with a spike. And then just as they start to calm down, you hit them with another spike and another spike and another. And at the end, instead of the very common, are there any questions? You might ask a better question like, what do you think? Or you hit them with another spike. I call this the bed of nails. It's hard to sleep on a bed of nails, but it's exactly what you want to have when you're talking to your audience, when you want to get their attention. Can you have too many spikes? Yes, and you become a bizarre spectacle to your audience. However, if they are strategically placed in your speech or presentation, they're going to do wonderful things to make certain that your message is sticky with your buyer. Now, the word sticky comes from a landmark book by brothers Chip and Dan Heath called Made to Stick. I shared the speaker's platform with Dan Heath many years ago in Seattle. I love how he described a sticky idea or message. He said, by stick, we mean that your ideas are understood and remembered, and they have a lasting impact. They change your audience's opinions or behaviors. So let me ask you, do you want your message to be understood, remembered, and also change your audience's attitudes or opinions or behaviors? That's what a spike does. It makes your message, even a non-compelling one, stick so it is understood, remembered, and changes your audience's opinions and behaviors. I've been teaching and coaching spikes for many years now, and I can tell you that spikes work with every audience, in every situation, all the time. There is one for every occasion. We'll cover 11 spikes over the course of the Story War Academy. I'll use the phrase ilk moves, ILQMOVS, to remind us of all the spikes available to us. Today we'll cover just 2 of them, and I'll introduce those to you in our next lesson. All right, so that's the lesson on why we want to make our message sticky. Like Chip and Dan said, we want it to be understood, remembered, and change our behavior. Spikes are fantastic, and we're going to spread them out over various webinars and lessons, and you'll start to see how they are used and, in some cases, how they shouldn't be used. Okay, so in wrap up today, next week's lesson scheduled to be more on stick, this concept or tool of the spike and ilk moves. I actually might push it out a week, and I'll tell you why, because next week is kind of special to us here in America. Okay, next steps for you. If you want to get on my calendar and talk about your team or your situation and how the Story War Academy might help you, there's the link. Pause right now, copy it, and get on my calendar. Because you watch this webinar, I'll give you my time to listen to you talk about your team. And if you want to know more about the Story War Academy, go to that website right there, and there's a good video that goes into greater detail. And we'll also include these links in the follow-up from this email. Okay? So, Q&A. Obviously, today with Q&A, it's recorded, so I don't have any questions or answers. You're on your own for that one. Okay, so our final video of the day. You know I love to have fun with videos to make you laugh, to make a message more sticky, so to speak. Well, this one's a little more serious and a little more meaningful. Here in America, next week is a very special holiday called Thanksgiving. I know you folks in Britain may not celebrate it quite the way we do here in America, but it's a time for families to get together and to thank each other for what's really important in their lives. We eat turkey, mashed potatoes and gravy, stuffing, candied yams, and then we sit around and watch football, or we go out and try and play football, and it's just a very lazy, fun time to be with family. Well, this video that I'm going to show you comes from a Thailand mobile provider called TrueMove H. And this is a true story, but it's very touching. So stay to the end of it.
ออกมานี่เลยนะไอ้ขี้ขโมยไหนดูสิเอาอะไรไปออกมานี่เอาไปทำอะไรเนี่ยฮะ
Ngồi à?
Giờ thăm như vậy nè.
Ngồi, cao lẩu. Chọ, nayเลยครับนั่งเลย
Ba.
จัดไปอ้าวสั่งมาเร็วต่ออะไร
I love the Thai people. I hope that's meaningful to you. I hope you all, wherever you are in the world, go out and have a fantastic time with your family, remembering what's really important. Now go out and be your best story. Thank you for being here today.